What up, y'all? It's your dude Born Shining here. I'm Born Shining, you're Born Shining. It's all Born Shining. Well, most of us, anyways. And don't let nobody convince you that you weren't born shining. And if they do try, just recognize that it might not be for you. I want to give a shout out to the Universal Life Force, Spirit which moves through all things, Great Creator, Source, Archangels and Ascended Masters. Thank you. Thank you, Ra. Thank you to my spirit guides and spirit animals. Thank you to my ancestors and crossed over loved ones. Thank you. Thank you, Earth. Thank you to the star family. Thank you, all my invisible helpers, my friends known and unknown, seen and unseen. And in this episode, I just wanted to give a quick. We'll see how quick it ends up being, but just talk about the truth and what is the truth. I was watching a reading the other day from Chiron, Chiron Intuition. He's awesome. Um, and so this idea came up in his reading that facts versus truth, like what are facts versus what is true. And that really resonated with me a lot. I mean, it wasn't new, but it's nice to hear somebody else talk about it, and it's nice to be reminded of that fact, you know. So yeah, facts versus truth, and what is the truth, and how do we know the truth, and I guess the easy way to put it is you already know the truth. It's not a question of knowing the truth, it's a question of allowing the truth to influence your decisions and your conduct, your behavior, your thoughts, your mindset, your mentality, allowing the truth to hit your heart and having that be okay. There's a thing called cognitive dissonance, which you may or may not be aware of. It's like the active um, distancing from the truth. It's like you don't want to see the truth. So it's like the mental gymnastics that surround being able to cope with the truth or push it away. And one of the examples that Chiron Intuition used was, at a certain point, or it was something like this, like at a certain point, it was a fact that we didn't have, humans didn't have cell phones. Before there were cell phones, there was no, cell phone. You know, that's a fact. But the truth is that we're all communicating in ways that we can't really fully comprehend. Um, Definitely, science is just getting around to being able to explain a lot of these things. But still, facts versus truth. And, on that note, the truth is that you already know the truth. And you already know the truth because that's how you're designed. That's how the Creator has designed you. You know, your biological technology far surpasses, is far more sensitive than any device or technology ever created by man, possibly ever will be created by man. We have what's called our superconscious. And so, on an intuitive level, on a superconscious level, you already know what the truth is. That's not the issue. The issue that I see is, what do you do about the truth? How do you incorporate the truth into your life? Do you walk your truth? You know, speak the truth. You know, like the light that goes into the prism comes out a rainbow. You know, we're the rainbows. Our chakras, everything's separated down here. Nevertheless, it's all connected. So the separation is an illusion. And all these secrets and all of these things that seem to be hidden, you can't, it can't be hidden. It's hidden from sight, but it's not hidden from the superconscious. That's why remote viewing is effective. That's why psychics are effective. Mediums. That's why mediums can do what they do. You know, there's another layer to our physical world that is not perceivable by our five senses. That's why they call it the sixth sense. Because it's a whole body thing. It's a whole organism thing. It's like your chakras, your skin, your hair, your gut, all your organs, your heart, all these things work together to move you and put you in alignment with the truth. And I think we need to make a distinction between your truth and the truth. And the truth, I think the trick is to align yourself, to align your truth with the truth. And that's not to say that you can't, you can't really, your truth is gonna change depending on your experiences, depending on where you're at in your journey, where you're at in your development, your growth. Your truth is going to change if you're learning or not. You know, those kinds of things are going to impact your truth. But the truth doesn't change regardless of how your truth changes. So this idea of superconscious, it's available to everybody. And it's just a question of, do you allow it to do you allow it room in your heart, in your mind, and does it influence your decisions? You know, once you experience the truth, or even a little taste of the truth, a little glimpse of the truth, it's hard to live a lie. And I would even go so far as to say it's destructive. It's destructive to do things that are not in alignment with your truth. And I think part of the truth is that we're here to learn, we're here to explore, we're here to grow, we're here to advance our understanding of this separation and use it to our advantage because the universe is learning through us. And so it's not really a question of good or bad. I think it's a question of what feels better, you know? Like we've got free will, right? Anybody can choose to do anything at any time. So if we've got free will, good and bad is kind of relative to how you're impacted by the choices of other people, right? I think. You know, if somebody does something to you that doesn't make you feel good, you would call it bad. But if they do something that makes you feel good or benefits you, then you would call it good. But the truth is that if it's all moving the collective and humanity forward, we're all tied into this super conscious layer of existence, then all of these experiences are good, you know? I don't think there could be a bad. I mean, even the devil, you know? Without the devil, like if you're just on autopilot and you can't decide, you can only make decisions. Yeah, I think that's what separates humans from animals for the most part, but even animals are evolving. But for the most part, humans have free will, which is allegedly unique to earthlings, earth humans. So, if you can pick anything, where's how is that bad? Yeah, the goal is to learn. And so I mean, even if you make poor decisions or you have learning experiences, which is what they should be referred to as learning experiences, because if it's not bad unless you're not learning, you know? And sure, we can get into the debate about people intentionally causing harm and all of these kinds of things. But even then, you know, when I look at the people who intentionally cause harm, all they're really doing is providing a really solid mirror for people to make a choice of whether to align with that or not. You know, when I look at the people who have taken intentional actions against me that I wouldn't call good, ultimately, it's my choice on how to interpret and give meaning to those experiences. It's not up to those people, it's up to me. You define your own experiences. So even the people who have, you know, intentionally tried to hurt me, if you make it a positive experience for yourself, then isn't is that I would call that good. I'd call that a good experience, you know? And I think that's different than saying that like it's okay to cause harm. You know, I'm talking about making the best of a bad situation. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're here to do is we're here to learn why we're here to live intentionally, and we're here to learn why it's not okay, or why it's not acceptable or encourageable to do harm to other people and live in the way, especially the way in the West that we're living today. It's not harmonious. It's like a symphony orchestra, and every instrument is tuned differently. Every instrument is tuned to a different version of A, to a different note, and they're not even playing the same song. It's it's chaos, is what it is. Acoustical chaos. And so what we're here to do is we're here to learn. We're here to learn how to tune our own instruments, and we're here to unite in song so that we can make music. Sweet, sweet music. But we all know the truth. You know, I was watching I caught this video the other day, and lately what's it's not that I enjoy the entertainment. What's more interesting to me now is like reading the comments. There's some funny stuff going on in the comment sections, yo. But I'm it's really interesting, like I'm really curious about like how people perceive things. And so in this one video, or may have just been a picture, it was somebody talking about I think the basketball player Ja Morant. I don't know, like on his Instagram or something like that, he was waving a gun and he got suspended by his basketball team. And one of the basketball analysts or announcers or something like that was like, oh, my son, you know, my family's not going to spend money on this or that having to do with this guy. We're not buying his shoes. We're not buying his jersey. And and then in the comment section there was a discussion about wokeism and and how the NBA has ties with China and all of these kinds of things. And you know, I was looking through the comments, I see somebody say a comment, and it's like, if we follow this logic, then we're going to be boycotting like 75% of companies or something like that. And it got me thinking, like, that's really that's the issue. It's not that, again, it's not that people don't know the truth, you know, because clearly this person knows the truth and they said it. It's like, if we're going to follow this logic, then we're going to be boycotting like 75-80% of company. I think it's going to be more than that. But what he was saying, what this person was saying when they said that was, is it worth it? Like, how far do you want to go with this? You know what I mean? How far do you want to go with this boycott logic? And I mean, me personally, it was kind of like, I mean, it was a little comment, and if you know, if you don't know what you're looking for, what you're reading, then you may have missed it. But it's like, that's the problem. The problem is that people know the truth, but they don't not willing to do anything about it. And that kind of comes into like another aspect of this, and that is like comfort It's like the disadvantages of comfort, you know? It's like we've gotten so comfortable with the way things are that in order to change the way things are, we're creating our own discomfort. It's kind of a weird conundrum, you know? But for me, like when I hear these things and I think about this stuff, it's like, well, if there's some kind of like, you know, we just had to drain our pool because algae was growing in it from the pollen in the trees and etc. And it's just like saying, well, since there's algae in the pool, should you just let it go? You know, do you just let it go? Do you not do anything about it? It's a pain in the ass to clean. You got to hire somebody to come out, to drain the pool, they treat the pool, they take care of all of this stuff. It costs money. You got to fill the pool back up. It takes water and time and etc. And it's like, so the issue is not that you know that people don't know the truth. You know, it's that we're not willing to accept not just our role in it, but we're not willing to backtrack a little bit in terms of comfort and discomfort to be uncomfortable. You know, it's like what, like once you have somebody that makes you food, you know, once you have a personal chef, making your own food is a pain in the ass. Possibly. I mean, generally speaking, you know, or once you have a car and you've experienced what it's like to have your own car and you can just drive wherever you want, walking seems like a pain in the ass. You know, walking is going to seem like a huge burden. You know what I mean? But what if the car companies what if the money that the car companies are receiving are going not just to the employees, but that money is being invested in other companies that aren't maybe doing things that are in alignment with your values. You see what I'm saying? So this idea of walking after you've had a car, it can be a burden or it can be liberation. It all is all really a matter of perspective. And so it's not a question of do people know the truth about what's going on here, because when you talk to most people about what's really going on here, most people don't trust the government. Most people don't they know that there's something going on, you know, generally speaking, on some kind of level. This is the truth that people know. But the question is, what do you do about it? You know, are you willing to experience a little bit of discomfort to have a lot of liberation? You know, are you willing to, and that's kind of the rub. That's what these people in positions of power, they're betting on that. They're betting on the fact that people they're not going to disadvantage themselves and remove a little bit of what's a perceived luxury from their lives in order to regain control, reclaim control over their money, over their time, but really it's over their mind. So it's not just a question of do people know the truth? I think we've already established that through superconscious intuition, through superconscious layer of mind, everybody is aware of the truth. Because to take it a little deeper, we're all everybody with a heart, with a beating heart, is an electromagnetic being, even animals. You know, some animals navigate around the world, they migrate via magnetics and electromagnetism, the magnetic field of the earth. They know how to navigate So, humans aren't different. It's just that we've been conditioned away from thinking that that's a practical solution. So it's not that people don't know the truth. We all know the truth on some kind of a level. I think the bigger issue is, what do you do about that? And are you willing to forego a little bit of comfort? Or maybe even a better way to say that is, are you willing to experience a little bit of discomfort in order to produce positive change? You know what I'm saying? And at this point, this is where all the fear comes in. Well, what happens if I start growing my own food? Or what happens if I don't pay my taxes? Or what happens if I don't participate in this nonsensical systems and structures that exist? And I don't think that's the right question. I think that the better question is, what is there to gain by not participating? Because again, at the end of the day, when you look at the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, we don't have our rights because of the Constitution, because of the Declaration of Independence. We don't, that's not where our rights come from. Our rights come from the Creator. We're each endowed with certain inalienable rights by the Creator, natural law. The Constitution was put in place to preserve those rights, not establish them. So these structures and systems, there's nothing to fear. Because on a constitutional level, in the earthly realm, on a constitutional level, the people have the power. Not corporations, not government, it's the people. And when you ask the question of what's going to happen if I don't pay my taxes, or what's going to happen if I don't pay my DMV registration and all of this kind of nonsense, you're missing the point. Because it's our duty and obligation, not just as American citizens, but as creatures of divine creation, to oppose anything which limits us from retaining or expressing our full power. I've said it before, and it's no secret, the IRS is not, it's not even legal, first of all. IRS, the Federal Reserve, people who print the money printers, it's not even legal. So it's not a question, again, it's not a question of do people know the truth, because on some level everybody knows the truth. It's a question of, what do we do about it? And are you going to allow that to influence your decisions? Those are fear-based decisions right there. You know what I mean? You start letting in that fear of, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that? You're missing the point. These people are supposed to be working for us. All of these systems and structures are supposed to be working for us. And if they're not working for us, then should they exist? I mean, if you go to a job and you're not doing your job, you form an agreement with your employer that, hey, I'm going to show up at this time to do this job, and you don't do your job, what happens? Normally, you get fired. So it's like people can get fired from not doing their job, whereas these giant institutions they just keep getting they're allowed to do the same things over and over. You know what I mean? They're like allowed to repeat this terrible behavior, and there's no repercussions. There's no there's no blowback. Something's weird about that. And that's a key indicator how you know that fear is what's driving this whole thing, and not it's definitely not love or even logic. It's fear. It's irrational fear. And I think at the core of this is a fear of death, fear of suffering. I think maybe even a fear of suffering may come before, might be ranked higher than fear of death, because like if you're gonna die, then you're dead. You know what I'm saying? Like when you die, you're dead. You don't know that you're not alive. Suffering, on the other hand, this prolonged state of excruciating pain, seemingly unending pain. That sounds a little bit worse than just dying, you know, suffering. And then ranked below that is public speaking. People, this is just crazy. It's just crazy. So, but it's been a slow progression. I mean, there's a book, can't think of the title right now, but the author, his name is Alexis de Tocqueville. I believe he was a French scholar, at least. He probably did a lot of other things in France. But when he came to the United States in its early stages, he noticed that the United States was like a conglomerate of tiny republics, which means people growing their own food. That's where the whole an acre and a mule came from. That's where we started out with small government and liberty. The ability to grow your own food, the ability to have a certain degree of autonomy, and that's what kept the government small. When the government started becoming larger and things started becoming more unified in that way, we started creating systems. That's where the money system comes into play. That's where the the food system comes from. That's where all of these things come from. And again, like we just talked about, the more dependent people come on these systems, the harder it is. On the one hand, the harder it is to live without them. But then on the other hand, it opens the door for manipulation, in the sense that the people who are doing the manipulating are aware of, and even perhaps facilitating, this dependence. So it's like you get people hooked on the food system. Okay, well, now it's an easier now it's easier to justify all of these weird things that happen as a result of having people dependent on this food system. You got to keep it going. You know, you have to keep it going. They know that. So now they get to make money on the toxins. They get to make money on the healthcare system. They get to make all, they're just, and at the end of the day, money is just energy, you know? So these people are, they're taking your, I wouldn't even say taking. I mean, it's taking, but it's like, it's theft because it's not honest. Because, I mean, for example, here I am on 10 acres. They don't grow their own food here. They've got 10 acres, man. They're not growing their own food. Maybe that's on them. Maybe it's not. I mean, not everybody wants to grow food, but my point is that this illusion of like, oh, we need these things is really strong. And as Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about the biology of belief, it's like if you believe you need these systems and they're constantly, and by they, again, I mean the government, these institutions are constantly hanging this threat of all of these things going away, and you think you need these things, you believe you need these things. You're constantly living in this state of stress. And it's well known in health circles that stress is the number one killer. Stress creates environment in your body for disease and illness. It's like we're more stressed now having all these luxuries in our lives than indigenous people, cultures ever were or ever will be. I mean, these people live in harmony with nature. It's like, and to somebody that has all these so-called luxuries, that sounds stressful. But somehow, the people with all the luxuries are dying at a faster rate with worse illnesses that run the gamut from psychological to, physical, biological, and it's all related. So it's really challenging for me to separate them. But, you've got people with mental disorders, you've got people with heart problems, you've got people with digestive issues, you know, all of these all of these illnesses are manifestations of some kind of a stress. And so, I guess what's the what's because it's obviously it's not enough to point to the problem. Like you got to offer some kind of a solution. And my solution is understanding how trauma works. The first step is understanding trauma. Because when you understand trauma, you can understand in your own life how you're being controlled by it. Because when you experience trauma, you just start reacting. You just start reacting. Like if you look at fighters, for example, trained fighters, what separates a trained fighter from somebody that has only a well-trained fighter from somebody that has received a little bit of training versus somebody that's had no training? And the answer is disciplined responses. The well-trained fighter knows that they're going to have to take a couple of hits, possibly. It's a possibility that they're going to have to take some some hits in order to have the right opportunity to deliver a counterpunch or a counterattack. And I mean, that's no different, that strategy doesn't change whether it's nations going to war or if it's two people fighting in the street. There's going to be some sort of casualties in that regard, but the difference is, like, the well-trained fighter is not gonna they're not freaking out because they get punched, you know in fact, they expect it. Whereas somebody that's got marginal training, they're maybe expecting the punches, but their responses aren't conditioned enough to be able to make the same decisions as the well-trained fighter. And the person who has no training whatsoever, they're just kind of flailing around, maybe, I wouldn't want to say 50-50. It might even be less than that, odds of them winning. So understanding trauma is huge, because when you know what your triggers are, not necessarily how they've been created, I mean, although that's beneficial for another reason, but when you understand what your triggers are, you can start to take control over your body, your mind. You can start to not react, and you can formulate responses. And so understanding trauma is huge. And in some way, we've all been traumatized by something. They say that the mind doesn't know the difference between, like, maybe a better way to say it is, there's people who do visualizations. They visualize playing a piano, for example. And when they watch the brain and when they measure the brain and observe the brain, they notice that people who imagine playing the piano, their brain lights up in the same way as someone who's actually physically playing the piano. And that's why visualization is such a crucial tool. That's why it's a very crucial tool in overcoming these kinds of things, because you can do mental exercises that put you in situations and you can develop different responses. It's like training, you're training your responses through visualization and mental exercises. And in some way, we've all been traumatized, whether you've actually been, like I have, abused as a child, sexually, physically, emotionally, psychologically, all of these kinds of things, or you're just watching this happen on TV, or you're watching it happen to other people in real life. I think that does something to people, especially when we hear these stories about people like, Jesus and Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and they did positive things. They stood for amazing positive things, and at the end of the day, what happened to them? So connecting back to this idea, this fear of death, it's like, on a subconscious level, we all know that taking the proper and appropriate action is gonna lead to some sort of end. But I don't think that's a sufficient reason to not take action. And at the end of the day, death is an illusion anyways. Energy doesn't, you can't destroy energy, it just transforms. The soul is enduring, the human soul is enduring. And so, in that regard, death is an illusion. And when people overcome the fear of death, when you realize that death is not the end, maybe the end of this particular life and this particular incarnation, but it's not the end of you as a soul, as a spirit. When you're willing to go to that extent to reclaim your power, not just for yourself, but for the future generations, for the children, man, the children in the future, people who are coming after us. When you're willing to lay that on the line, you don't have to join the military to do that. You don't need any kind of special training to have courage. It just takes a will and the recognition that the benefits are more than the perceived losses. So understanding trauma is huge. And yeah. And not falling into these patterns of reacting, you know. And when you can be aware that you're being triggered, you can develop new responses, and you can develop more healthy responses to these external stimuli. So I think I'm gonna leave this one here, maybe make one or two more today. But in closing, walk your truth, speak your truth, and know that you're an eternal being, and that you can only be harmed if you believe that you can be harmed. How you perceive things and what you believe is happening is equally, if not more important than what's actually happening. All right. I love you guys. Have a blessed day. Peace.